really thank you for coming tonight. There's some materials. I'll explain what the materials are. I want to just tell you a little bit about these forums and really want to get you engaged. If I could ask you to do this, if we could just, and I would ask Eric Sickbert and Jason Osbald, Jeff Green's out there eventually, Jeanette Castillo, and I think Dr. Cristofero will probably eventually come up. Really the look is if we could almost have 4 people at every table. If you see a table that's a little heavier, in terms of 5 people or 6 people, if we can even it out. Doing these forums, we've really found that if there's at least 1 or 2 people at the table that you don't know, that really works out well. And if you have 4 people, we probably have a number, so I might just ask some people to kind of migrate and move and say, oh, you look like you need a 4th, right? If the spaces, once we get started, aren't working out for you, we brought these mics so that we could amplify the whole room. There's a nice foursome over in the corner there. There's one over by Jason Osbald. But really the idea is to kind of get everybody situated with each other, because a good meeting in the next hour is if you're talking to each other, and I'm not doing a lot of talking. I want to give you just a little bit of history of kind of what we're doing here. There's a yellow sheet, and you don't have to grab it now, but we just kind of placed it if you want to take a look at it. It's fairly important because it kind of gives you some operational decision making. It comes from this group, the Facilities Master Planning Council. And last year, as we proposed to the community, there were 6 proposals in the district for brand new construction. 7th proposal to renovate this building to create almost a new flavor. If you ever go to places that are vintage places like this, if you go to York High School, Glenbard West, what they're doing at Oak Park and River Forest right now, wow, it's pretty amazing what you can do in an old building. And that was really what we were, asking the community. And the community said no, and that's how we do things around here. But the whole time we kind of, and I don't mean we're a no community, democracy, that's how we make decisions. And I appreciate that. It gives you a creative constraint. You go back to the drawing board. And that whole time we were considering the what if. We can't just say, well, we voted no. Nothing to see here. We're not going to keep working. Really started thinking about what we would be able to do. We did a number of things. We had a council that predated the referendum that started coming about. Had that council getting warmed up to help out. Started talking to the board what we would do in the spring. We did a lot of communicating, and on May 13th, we actually did an open forum just about facilities. We did a very important survey that's connected tonight through a company called Innovate K-12, and we got a huge response. If you ever want, I have a copy of all the responses. I sort of set it out. It's on our website. I'd be happy to make a copy for you. It's fascinating because I think it leads us to some conclusions that we might make about our community, where we're at. On May 20th, the board, based on all that data in the spring, did a resolution. And this is really independent of the work that we were doing on the building. This is a future. And the board said they resolved really 4 things. The first thing was to do $26.2 million in debt in what's called life safety bonds. And those are bonds to really take care of roofs, electrical, water supplies, things like that. Many of you in here have used debt to stretch out a payment on your home, on a car, but to make sure that payment isn't so high that you can't live. You can't buy pizza on Friday night. And that's really what the board was thinking, and without going into the intricacies of what a life safety bond is. To use some of our fund balances, $10 to $12 million to put into building funds. Then to seek alternative revenue sources that could generate for us income that wouldn't touch your tax bill at all, would just allow us to get that income, to get financing, and that income is paying for that financing. We're pretty close to working on a community solar lease to option, a start for a community solar project. That could be very beneficial to the district. And then finally, rebuild those cash balances was something that we felt we really needed to do. So that really is taking us through kind of the next few years, but what else? What's the 15, 20, 30 year project? And we have a group called the Facility Master Planning Council. They're really working on that. These community forums were born out of something they recommended in June, and that's on that yellow sheet. They wanted to be transparent, they wanted to be open, they wanted to engage the community. So we've done these the whole month of October. We'll get back together in November and debrief what we've learned. We do, when you leave tonight, we can't have an educational setting without homework, right? And so we do have a little bit of homework, and if you don't want to do it on your cell phone, we do have paper copies. But we do want to do a little exit slip with you. But what we're going to ask you to do tonight is just 2 rounds of conversation. And on that survey in the spring, the company that we worked with took 700 responses, hundreds of pages written. And what they did is they used AI tools to compress what are the 5 big ideas. And tonight, we really want you to react to the big ideas. We want to hear what you have to say about it. And those big ideas are sitting right in front of you. It's on a sheet. Ms. O'Halloran is holding it. Hey, you guys, Jay and Tammy, you know what we're trying to do is, if you don't mind, we're trying to sit with somebody you don't know, and then ideally 4 at a grouping, if that's okay. We can get a chair for here, and there's we might need to make another group kind of right over there by the chessboard, and we'll get into it in a second. And so the sheet that Ms. O'Halloran is holding, if you don't mind if I steal it, it should be in front of you, and it kind of looks like this. And these were 5 conclusions. Oh, that's perfect, thank you. These were 5 conclusions from the survey, and we're kind of testing these out. First conclusion that citizens said was renovate and upgrade existing facilities. Second conclusion was an expectation of financial responsibility and being aware of the taxpayer burden. 5th conclusion was we'd like to have a long-term 10, 20, 30-year plan, a vision, and then continue having community forums to build trust. And then really you need to utilize existing spaces, all right? And so tonight what we'd really like to do is explore those ideas. And in the first round of exploration, I'm gonna assign your table the topic. Then we'll do another round and you pick the topic, if that's okay, all right? Once you have about 10 or 15 minutes to react to the topic, just to kind of share your truth, share across the table, meet a new citizen, then it's the Phil Donahue show. Dang, fewer and fewer people know who Phil Donahue is. This is horrible. We've got mics. Was that Geraldo Rivera?
That was Geraldo.
We're going to grab you and give you a mic, and we're not. You don't have to represent your table. You don't have to pick one person at your table to represent. We're just going to process that out. We're just going to ask you to say what you talked about at your table and what you learned, what's on your mind. You can speak your mind, the table's mind, but process that out a little bit. And then we'll do another round on a topic that you picked. Is that okay? All right. We've got 6 groups, we have 5 topics, so I'm going to make one redundant, if that's okay. So if you have your sheets, and a couple people have them in their hands, I am going to actually just start right from the top. And if there's anybody who's been to a previous forum, you're like, I did this last time, Dr. McBride, just tell me. But if this group right here, if you could start right at the top with the very first one, renovation and upgrades for facilities. Use that very top as, react to it. You know, what are you thinking? What are your thoughts when you read what the survey says? What's on your mind? I'm going to ask this group to take financial responsibility and taxpayer burden. And then, because it's such an important idea, I'm also going to ask this group, if you don't mind, financial responsibility and taxpayer burden. If y'all could flip over and you could take on the very back, long-term vision and planning. Just read that and react to it. If I could have this group take community engagement and trust, and then if I could have this group take the very last one, utilization of existing spaces. And before we get started, could I ask all my colleagues, Mr. Sickbird, Dr. Oswald, Mr. Bartley, Dr. Cristofero, if everybody could get to a place, you know, if you could find a cheat, you know, just join in. You know, that way when I say go, and Dr. Green, that's a really big group. And Dr. Green, do you mind getting to a group that's not quite as big? You know, just 4 or 5 I found is kind of a better conversation. There's a group of 3 here. We're going to have one group of 5 here. Like this group right here, Dr. Green, and we can grab a chair. So, hey, let's get into it. Let's get started. I'm going to get Carrie Green a chair for right there, and then let's get into it. We'll give you about 10 or 15 minutes. Here's the way that we've done this. You know, some tables don't have a mic, but I'll be happy to come on over and put it there. We've really just, you know, we haven't assigned somebody, like you said, at the table. You have to be the spokesperson for the table. What we've done is, you know, in the first round, I will ask somebody from each table just to check in. Next round, a little bit more organic. Don't want to pressure anybody, you know, to feel like they have to speak, but in this particular regard with those 5 topics, it'd be good just to hear, you know, from each table. I'm going to pass the mic over here if there's somebody willing to take it. And what I tend not to do, just so you know, I tend not to cut people off. You know, this is really a forum for us to listen to each other and hear from each other. So I only just ask, you know, be aware that we're going to go to 5 tables, right? You know, for sure, and there might be other people who want to speak. So just be sensitive to that, you know.
So I can talk for a while, or I can talk for a little bit, but I think we didn't vote, but our group talked about, you know, everybody's pro renovation. I think we all want to do better. We all want to, you know, give our kids the best and what and how we educate them, and kind of talking about the idea of a freshman center. I think the group, and maybe I can get some nods, all believe in this building and renovating this building, and you know, bringing it to a modern standard. And talked a little bit about why the referendum failed, but that wasn't really our topic. The topic was just bringing this building to a better place. Is there anything that I missed?
My name is Brian Stashak, and just so all of you know what I do for a living, I'm the Director of Business Services at Lyons Township High School. And so I have a little bit of not a little bit, I have a lot of experience in talking about what we're talking about here. And funny that the financial responsibility and taxpayer burden landed here at this table. Anyway, you know, just a couple things that I kind of mentioned, and we too, of course, as a group are saying, hey, look, we would love to be able to renovate these facilities. Just a quick, brief discussion for you, and many of you may already know this. The way the state of Illinois chooses to fund schools is they do so by a process called local control. It's how we ended up with 845 school districts in the state of Illinois. And so what ultimately happens is it's left to the local communities to decide how you want to fund your schools, what you want them to look like, and really ultimately what you want to pay for them, all right? And so you have that ability to say, yes, we want to do this, or no, we don't want to do that. Now, typically that involves taxes, property taxes, because that's the main driver of revenue for all taxing bodies in the community. So it's not just the school district, but your fire protection district, library, park district, all of those. That's where all those dollars come from. And you probably have seen, you know, the library run a referendum before, the fire protection district, right? So they're all looking to raise taxes because, you know, for whatever purpose they're doing. But what's really important about that is, as a community, we have the ability to decide what we want this to look like, right? And so how do we want to fund our schools? What do we want them to look like? And I think what a lot of people forget is that, yes, it's going to, and I can tell you right now, nobody at this table, and I'm pretty sure no one at any of these other tables, wants their taxes raised anytime soon. I can pretty much guarantee that. That being said, when you look at a school district, you basically have 4 ways of which to raise money outside of your general operating budget. And that is either you sell bonds, which was already done, you go out and you run a referendum, you pass a referendum, you use your fund balances, or you sell assets. That ultimately, that's really the 4 opportunities that you have. There are, you know, It'd be nice if we could get a bake sale that would raise $40 million. Probably not gonna happen. And so there's a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, there's only a few ways at which school districts can do that. And so it's difficult, because what do you want the community to look like? And then on the backside of that, you have to remember too, and I know this is tough for a lot of people to keep in mind, your property values, your home values are directly tied to what this community is going to support and how it's going to support its community members, including the students of this community. If you have great schools, you have great facilities, people are going to want to move here. And if you don't, they probably don't want to move here. What does that mean for your home value? I don't know, but it's something that, we always have to keep in mind. And again, keeping in mind the fact that people don't really want to raise their property taxes. But so it's ultimately, what do we want to do with it? And it's an uphill battle, because as I was saying, you typically have about 25 to 30% of residences in the community that have students in a school, or at that time, or maybe coming to the school. So maybe 70% of the people don't, and they can come up with many reasons why they don't want to vote for a referendum. So it is an uphill battle, yet there really isn't a large number of ways in which a school district can raise money. So it's just something to keep in mind as the group goes forward, thinking about that. That's it.
So we can focus up a little bit more on the financial responsibility and the taxpayer input when it comes to school budgets. And one of the things that we spoke about is who's financially responsible when a school comes up with its budget. And inevitably, it is the elected school board member. The elected school board member at any school is not only the voice of the parents of the children that go there, but they are also the voice of the taxpayers that put them there, the taxpayers that make up the school district. And one of our concerns was, well, how do they come to their budgets? Okay, are they budgeting for what they need, or are they budgeting for what their wants are? Because wants and needs are things that we as a community, as individuals, deal with in our households on a regular basis. Because we have to budget for what our household's going to need to live, thrive, and survive. But when it comes to a want, is that want truly necessary? And to get that financial responsibility out, it is basically up to the board. Now, we had spoke about, hey, the kids and the children that are our future, they have to have what they need to learn and thrive in their community, so they can be great participants in this community when they leave these institutions. But we've got to be sure that we're not wasting the taxpayer dollar, because with every taxpayer dollar that comes in, that's a Saturday that somebody may have worked overtime away from that family. It's maybe 2 hours that a child is home alone before mom or dad gets home for dinner because they're in a two-parent income. So the taxpayer dollar has to be respected by all means, because there's so much that goes into it, the blood, the sweat, and tears of the family member that is away from their child, or the retiree that is living in that community that is on a fixed budget, but now because they're not getting enough as retirees, they're working part-time. I see them all the time in local stores, early morning. So that's what we talked about. And again, it's not about taking away, it's about making sure you have what you need, but not to an excessive amount that we're wasting it. We hear so many stories of teachers all the time that say, administration came up to me today and said, hey, do you have anything, is there anything you need for your classroom? And sometimes you hear these stories where teachers are like, no, I have everything that we need. And teachers are told, well, if you don't get it now, we're going to lose it. We have to get that spend it or lose it mentality away from our school boards. But with that being said, the financial responsibility comes to the board. And as long as they're doing their due diligence and the budgets are genuine, then by all means, they got to have what they need.
My name is Jeannie Rodewald. I'm a community member here, and my son is a teacher here. We talked about long-term vision and planning, and we had differing opinions at the table, so I'll try to represent both. Please jump in if I miss anything. We talked a lot about transparent communication and community engagement. There's part of the table thought that, you know, there's plenty of transparent communication and engagement going on. It's whether or not people in the community are actually partaking in that transparent communication and engagement. It's there for your taking, but you have to actually pay attention. It's there, it's on the website, there are board meetings, there's lots of people, you know, there's how many kids in the school district, or in the school, you know, almost 4,000 kids. I bet there aren't that many people at your board meetings. So if you want to know about some of these things like facility management and whether or not, you know, we're going to expand the campus or some of the ideas for this, this campus, or detailed reports on repairs and the life safety issues, you can find all of those things in board minutes, and they're all discussed at board meetings. But then there's the other school of thought that says that maybe not all of that information is shared. Not all of it is shared up front, and that it's happening in one-to-one conversations rather than out in the open at a board meeting where more than just one or two people could hear it. We did just touch briefly on the idea of expanding East Campus. We talked about the idea of a census, so to speak, of a study to see, you know, where the population is going with our high school age students. You know, communities around us have used those studies, and they've not necessarily come out to what they expected. Our neighbors in New Lenox that happened to them. I happened to work in Lamont. It happened in Lamont. And, you know, so those are about worth the paper that they're written on. They don't always come to fruition. But something like that would certainly help in some long-term planning on what our next steps should be. I know Dr. Green shared that you do have some long-term planning already in play. This is part of it, which is great. And then we touched briefly on the idea of expanding East Campus, definitely split there as well. I happen to live by East Campus, and the idea of putting more kids and more cars and more facilities on that little piece of property there, which I know looks big, and there's a golf course, a 3-hole golf course there, but the idea of having more traffic in that area is, in my opinion, not great. The kids are, you know, parking in our neighborhoods, and there's lots of kid traffic, and they're not the greatest drivers, and I think that would be a lot of kids in one place, and in my opinion, as an educator, not necessarily safe to have that many children of that age on one piece of property.
Hi, I'm Joanne Bartleson. I'm a resident here. I do not have children in high school anymore. I'm also a city alderwoman for the city of Lockport. So I hear a lot of things discussed. I'm also an election judge, and when the referendum was on the ballots, our last election, I had to hold my composure because there was so much talk about the referendum and such misunderstanding what it was all about, distrust of the school board, how they handled the budget. There was just a lot of things that you wanted to say, you know, that's really not correct. Go and talk to someone, you know, at the high school. So I think the communication isn't always there. And because of that, I think people tend to make up their own stories, or how they perceive things, or how they hear from one person to another. The story gets changed, and it becomes a big balloon ready to pop. I think communication is very important for the school district, especially for the seniors, because it was mostly seniors that I was hearing. You know, to talk about not understanding, some of their conversation that they were having. So I think communication is very important. And referendums, of course, that always means tax hikes. And unfortunately, Lockport does have high taxes. As a city, we're doing what we can to keep our costs down as a city, because we do know that the majority of our taxes are the school board, the district. So I guess we have to put our minds together and try to come up with some kind of solutions. How can we get money, whether it's from the state or federal or whatever, and not always put the burden on the resident? Because right now, with inflation, everything is high, and it just seems like there's no end right now. And I think people are just overwhelmed, and I don't think you'll ever get a referendum passed unless we come to some kind of solution other than constantly jacking up the taxes on the homes. And some of the taxes don't even make sense in some of the homes that we have. And maybe it has to go to the tax assessor's office. We have to maybe, somehow get on, somebody's gotta get on that board, and find out where are they coming up with all these, pricing of, rates on these homes. I'm in real estate and I feel bad. People can't afford a home, even though they can afford the payment, but once you add those taxes in, that's it. They get disqualified, they can't go that high. So until we come to some kind of solution, it's always gonna be an issue. Today, tomorrow, and in the future. That's it.
My name's Kevin Perkins here, so I'm just a local resident. I don't have any students or kids that go to the school here, but again, I work in education. In our group, everyone else in the group does have children going through the system here. So I think we all did, again, see the value that long-term, something needs to be done to make sure that the school system is supported, that we're doing what's important in terms of the community and the district to communicate what these changes are going to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. As Sandy kind of talked to us a little bit about the last referendum, I would say it was probably the best job the district tried to get the most information out. It still didn't pass. Again, as was stated, it's a big number. And, again, building a new high school at $160 million, never going to happen. Even $80 million, that's a big chunk of change, especially as the inflation rates are high. That's a tough number to kind of break down. But again, I think when it failed the last time, the questions I came back was, okay, well, how can the district relook at that project? How can they communicate, how to break this project into smaller chunks? Maybe you can't do everything and get it all approved at once, but can that project be stretched out maybe a little bit longer in smaller segments, so that they do see what is happening, the building can get renovated, and we're breaking this up into stages. Again, the bigger component in this community, especially those that live around Central Campus, is there is a senior community that lives in that area, and a lot of them, as my mother lives with me in my house, and she has spoken with a lot of her other friends. A lot of those aging members, they all went to school here, but they may no longer see the reason why they should contribute more money, more tax dollars to upgrade a facility when they're never going to send anybody here anymore. And that's it's an unfortunate, realization to come to, but they really need to understand where the benefit is in the future of our children, the future of the students, and making a district that can do more and offer more. So again, more people want to move into the community. And again, the other flip side of that point is if the community doesn't understand, as they continue to build more homes, more townhomes, and it may not be within the first 5 years, but 5, 10, 15 years down the road, those families are going to have more kids. Where are those kids going to go? We only have 2 buildings. And you know, unless we do renovate, build out bigger spaces, upgrade this space, demolish the space, something has to get done. The community needs to understand that we're gonna run out of room, and they need to understand where, you know, where's that money gonna come from to build that space. And I do think, I would like to see more on the, not just the school district side to communicate that out, but as well as on the township of Lockport to also integrate with some of those builders, those communities, to, you know, look for those funding dollars somewhere. Because, I mean, there are a lot of grants that can help with some of these things. There are a lot of programs that help with funding. I'm sure you guys have looked into a lot of those areas over the years. You know, again, a lot of us here work in school districts, so we understand the reasoning why we're here and what we need to do. It's for the students. But again, it's to get that message out to the rest of the population that either they don't have kids here anymore, or they did, but they no longer do. And I think a clear concept of how that money's being spent, you know, right down to the dollar. And again, anybody who just looks at a flat rate number of $80 million, I'm not gonna do that. But, okay, maybe if I'm looking at, say, $20 million, and we're only gonna be able to do a third of the building, and this is what that looks like. This is how that money's being spent, you know, and they could get a little better buy-in to do a project of that size, as opposed to just, let's do the entire building or build a new space, because it's just too much for them to realize they don't want to spend the money. No one wants more taxes, I don't, and I don't have any kids here. But again, I also work for a school district, that's where my paycheck comes from. So it makes sense to put money back into the district, because again, we're trying to put value in our students, make sure we have a top-notch quality program, and again, continue people to come and live in our community. Because again, the downside of that is if we don't do something, we don't renovate, we don't improve, people will leave.
Hi, I'm Lori Christopher, Assistant Superintendent, and I've been voluntold by Lee, class of 65, that I will be speaking.
Yeah, you don't go against that.
No. We really talked about a couple of things. One, we have a grad here for sure who is a proponent of keeping, maintaining, preserving this building. We were on utilization of existing spaces, and so the topic of the fourth floor, there was a beautiful classroom up there that you can't use because it's out of fire compliance for exiting. We also talked a little bit about the auditorium. Again, Lee's a proponent of that auditorium being there. And then also though, Jeff, who's a graduate of 86, talked about his belief kind of maybe in 2 classes being in a building, you know, something similar to what he experienced. He talked about just the electrical use by having 2 classes there, realizing that we can't really house 2 classes in this building. But I think the larger message was, whatever happens, there needs to be additional athletic spaces on both buildings, wherever. Did I get that okay? Jeff wants to talk now.
So piggybacking off of some of you guys' message, we know the taxes will always keep going up. It's nothing we can do. I used to buy a Snickers for 25 cents, it's $2 now. So it's gonna be hard to get around that. I know we have to work with the board and work with the money that we do have right now coming in as taxes, but going here, watching my son the last 4 years, watching the surrounding things that happens in the overcrowding, I was overwhelmed with it. I can't blame the school board, I can't blame the faculty right now. I mean, I understand that it's the school board problem and the faculty's problem, but we keep breaking records on kindergartners. I think the last 2 years we're breaking records on kindergarten. They're pity-pattering to this school. What are we gonna do for them? I mean, we gonna pile up those, what were those, trailers again? I mean, I hated to see that. And it's just things that, I hate to say it, I always want to talk about sport. My son made the high honor roll last semester, so just don't think I'm here to talk about athletics. But it's just things that I see. You know, we had a freshman game one year, last year, and the parents came to the game. They had to sit in the grass at East. And I had phone calls, and I'm like, I know I'm an alumni, but they called me and said, Green, why am I sitting on the grass out here? Why am I not in the stands? And I was like, well, I can't answer that, but you know, it's just, we gotta work together. I don't see and know everything about the budget. I will be running for the school board, but we gotta work with what we have. And like I said, those kindergartners, they're pitty-pattering to the school.
Hey, I want to maybe take it in a little bit of different direction. You know, with some, you know, we try to kind of get to 8. I'm going to maybe ask if you go a little bit over 8. Just a couple of different things. One, I do want a couple of people brought up demographics, and we are on a current demographic report 2 years ago. But I would tell you, it is spot on. I'll give you a couple reasons why. You know, a few things that our demographer told us that you know that are, I think, very worthwhile. One, we're actually, Jeff, in a decline, and that is true for kindergartners too. We're going to be in a decline till about 2027, come up on a flat, you know, for a bit. You know, so what our demographer, and we are right on the nose. And this was a demographic projection for all 7 feeder areas too. So we're not seeing that big bubble of students, and that sometimes is a driver in a community of what they want to do next. But our demographer said we're not seeing more students, we're seeing different students. And let me give you an example. In 2019, when students took the state accountability test, the SAT, of the students who sat down, the 950 students who sat down for that, 11% were considered low income, qualified for low income. Last spring, 29% of those students qualified for low income. And actually that number was right on the nose what our demographer projected. He said, you're not getting more students, you'll be getting different students. And really advised the board 2 years ago to focus in on what would you do for the needs of different students, different types of learners, different types. He also, I will say, on the political side of things, advised the board as also a political consultant that this is a tough community to get a consensus. He said that in 35 years of studying school districts, only 5 had every single demographic trend in the country compressed into one area. And he said, you're one of the 5. And maybe I'll make a mention of that, but it's probably time for me to stop talking. So that is a reality that our board, we're on 2 years into that 10-year projection. It's been right on the nose, both in terms of the types of students we're seeing, but the number of students that we're seeing. And that's significant in the planning that you do, like you mentioned. You know, rather than going back around, I think a lot of people, and you've got the sheet and you can take a look, can we just maybe do just a little bit of, hey, you know, hey, I've got something on my mind, you know, rather than formally going back, you know, through. I seem to have gotten a really good sense, right? I'm gonna come on over to Rachel, that you've looked at it and kind of just do a little listening in the bigger sense too with each other.
A lot of talk about taxes, okay, I get that. When I was in school, and I know that was ancient history, but when I was in school, the hardest part, or the hardest group of people to get to vote for a referendum were the cranky old people who didn't want their taxes to go up. That is not the case anymore. I mean, okay, yes, there are still some cranky old people who don't want their taxes to go up. But we also have a group of people who want something their way, and they're always going to say no until they get what they want. Now, to renovate, your taxes will go up a little. To get that new school building, your taxes will go up exponentially. So they seem to be okay with that idea. They don't like the idea of just renovation. I don't get that. As far as Old people not wanting to pay higher taxes. I don't know, somebody paid taxes when I went to school. Somebody paid taxes when my kids went to school, when my siblings went to school, when my mother and my father went to school. I look at it this way, we want to educate our children because guess what? They're going to be the doctors, nurses, and CNAs that take care of me in the hospital or the nursing home or somewhere, and I want them to be good and smart and knowledgeable. And as far as information, I think a lot of information goes out, but the people have to do their part. The information goes out, we the people have to look for it, have to read it, have to figure it out, have to understand it, and if we don't understand it, ask questions. So, and I don't think and I remember the studies saying that we were pretty flat, the numbers were going down, and I don't want to end up like Lincoln Way. You know, a whole empty building. And you know, okay, maybe the numbers are going to go up in the future, but I don't think we need to build today for something that's going to happen in 20 years. That's just not the way we do things. And even to try to pass a smaller referendum. 20 million, okay, let's do what we can with 20 million. What are you going to do at the end of that? Try to pass another referendum for 20 more million, or another one for 20 more million after that? People will get tired of that too, so. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents.
Hi, my name is Tammy Hayes, and I've been to quite a few school board meetings. A couple things I want to touch on just because I think that it is very pertinent to say this. Yes, your house means a lot to you, and the more that it's worth, the greater it is if you're selling. If you're here for the long haul, your insurance is higher because your value is higher. Your taxes are higher because your value is higher. And how do you lower your taxes? You literally have to get 18 comparables, go to the board, fight them on your own. There's almost no lawyers in Will County that want to help you, so it's a big deal. And if you're here for the long haul, you don't want your house valued at $400,000 when you know the house next door, who's got 3 more bedrooms and a walkout basement and 2 lots attached to it, sold for $400,000. Your house is not worth $360,000 if it doesn't look like that one. Second thing I want to say, when it comes to building on to East, this has been brought up, and some of you know that I'm part of a group that was trying to get some information out there. The idea was that maybe we build a freshman center at East. There is land there, yes, there's a golf course, yes, but there's still space there. And it's space that the school board could use, or the district could use, if they decided to do that. When we talk about $166 million, that's a 4-year school with football fields and gyms and lunchrooms and lab space. That's not what, when someone says we could build on, maybe that's not what we're talking about. Are we fully investigating that? Because it is our tax money, it is our district, and we do care about the kids. Do we really want the CCC program to stay here when we have to completely renovate the space they're in? I mean, I've been told more than once, if you saw the space, practically bring tears to your eyes, that they have to work down there. Then why does no one want to build onto East maybe just a freshman campus? They can share some of the facilities. They can have their own lunchroom, but there's ways to work around that. So I just want to make sure that when people say we want to build, or people would never vote to build, that's not entirely true. Maybe they just don't want to build a 4-year school because they're not sure if we need it. We don't want to end up like Lincoln Way. We also don't want District 113 in Lamont. Their board continued to vote against future tax hikes. That's how that district blew that up. And Lincoln Way did something very, very similar. So that's all. We just have to think with our heads, be fiscally responsible, and think what's the best use of space that we do already own, or if we own it and we're not using it, maybe it needs to go on the market.
If I can just piggyback on that, please. So you're absolutely right. First of all, school district is what drives people into our community, and that helps with the values of our homes. Yes, it does make a big difference then on your taxes, because the more you pay for a home, and the home gets reassessed every time that home sells, the taxes are reassessed, and yes, you may be paying higher taxes. I also had written down condensing why is it that the freshmen have to be separated from the freshmen and, or juniors, sophomore and juniors and seniors? Now, I grew up many years, graduated many years ago from high school. We had one building that had 3 floors. And it was freshmen, sophomore, juniors and seniors, and they actually had junior college attached to the school also. Maybe we need to think about condensing, and somehow, if we have to build on to the existing Lockport East, why not? People may even be more apt to understand that more than building a brand new school or taking money and putting into an older building that's always going to need something done. So that's all I have to say.
Building onto East isn't as simple as building a few classrooms for the freshmen. It's going to be gym space, it's going to be cafeteria space, it's going to be washrooms, it's going to be parking lots, it's going to be rooms for bus turnarounds, it's going to be all of that. It's going to be this building built onto that building. That's why it's not efficient or cost effective to build onto East. We have a building here. And as far as why the freshmen are here, developmentally, it is a great idea. It is fantastic to allow these 14-year-olds a year here alone to get used to being in high school with other 14-year-olds. It gives them a bridge.
You know what, and that, once again, is a matter of opinion, because a lot of people do not think that way.
Okay.
Yeah, and just a few things to add, just to kind of in the fact basis, just in your calculus, because it's not really about me, talking. It's about you listening to each other and just accepting each other's opinions. That, I would say that one of the things to mark and note is that, the research is definitive that the 9th grade year, whatever you do at that 9th grade year in high school, is the most decisive year. That's facts, socially, academically, developmentally, however you treat that year, whatever you do for that year. I will tell you, we are all struggling right now with behaviors that we're seeing coming out of the pandemic. I was on the phone, I see some of my educator friends shaking their heads, and I was just, with an attorney today who said it is worse in schools that are much larger and aggregate all of, I thought it was, we had our hands full, that it is more difficult in schools that they're not isolating their freshmen, that are not doing those kind of onboarding things, because simply it's a management issue, right? When students are dysregulated and struggling, when you have a tight community around them, there's supervision when you don't. So I would just ask you to think, I'm not proposing this is a solution we have right now, but we know definitively that the freshman year has emerged as the most important year for students. And just, I always invite people, anybody, any of these issues, budget, students, and most people know that if you call me, I have a board member tomorrow that's going to be driving around the district with me for 2 hours. I just really enjoy, I think if you got into this building, don't, form your opinion on the children that you see walking around here and then go to East, and just the differences we know between a 14-year-old and between an 18-year-old. So I think that's important to remember. I always say that a freshman center is not a building. It's an academic approach and a social approach and a behavior approach. So I just always ask audiences to think that way. And the other thing is the truth that we face. And I don't know what community you grew up in, but we have 7 feeder districts, and we have 2 parochial schools that feed in. That's an unusual feature. It's just far more diverse than you see in most communities. So that's something.
I actually had 5 communities, 5 or
Yeah.
6 communities that went to one high school.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Thornton Township High School.
Oh yeah, TF.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Yeah, we went Dalton, Riverdale.
Right.
Harvey, South Harvey, East Hazelcrest, and I think maybe not Margaret.
For a township, not
Yeah,
fraction.
back in the days, we only had one high school, we only had one grade school.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody, depending where you live, that's where you
How many
students were at the school?
Well, I had a graduating class of 900 and some students.
Let me, hang on one second, Jay, I want to make sure before the evening's over, if there's somebody who hasn't had a chance to share and really wants to. Not,
Can we add something?
you can, I think Mr. Roden's gonna add something too. So I am mindful of the clock, it is 8:15, I promised Abe. Oh yeah, grab
I
the
just want to
mic.
ask a question.
Yes, sir.
I just want to ask a question, because I know you know these numbers like the back of your hand. You talked about the decline in enrollment, and again, we talked about the freshman center and kids thriving as
Yeah.
freshmen in a smaller class setting.
right.
But like you did mention that we were in fact on a decline.
Right.
Now roughly we're about just under 4,000 students. And what are those numbers that the school has projected as the decline when we level out at about 2027?
Yeah, about 2027, and I'm just going from what I am seeing in my mind, we're gonna likely by 27 be at about, I think, 3,500, 3,400, right? And then there's gonna be a slow climb back up, you know, like imagine a flat curve. I kind of think, I see where your mind's going. In terms of, you have a smaller population, couldn't you, as Joanne suggested, compress that? The only thing I would say about that I would just ask you to think about is, again, the opportunity to have assets to really isolate that freshman, class, right? And then also, a few people mentioned the future. One of the things that Jerome McKibben, we hired him only because he studies housing. And I'll just share an interesting analogy he made. He sees Homer Glen as the linchpin, where it's the most likely place for bigger development. He did not predict that we would see much larger development in Homer Glen kind of in the next 5 to 10 year square. When I said, hey, in this 10-year projection, shouldn't we get ready for that? He said, well, no, really think about it this way. If, let's think of some mystical thing, like you're saying, Jay, where we're kind of flat, and you're saying that opens up space. If, suddenly it's dig, we're gonna do some development in 5 years, right? Well, generally who comes into that are homeowners with younger kids. It's gonna take 15 years for those younger kids to end up in a high school situation. So now we're 10, 20 years out, right? Because they gotta get to high school age, right? So that's just an interesting, I never thought about it that way. I just thought, wow, if there's a lot of development, better get ready. But I thought, oh, that is the case. The other interesting thing in our community is there's a lot of housing stock, and a lot that's being held on to by 65-year-olds and 80-year-olds. And Jerome McKibben, his advice to the board is that stock is going to free up. It's those homes that are going to free up, not new homes. So whatever that means to you, in terms of who occupies those types of homes, that was his prediction, just having demographic fun.
What is he saying about all of the apartments that are being built on 151st Street and 150th?
When those were proposed, that was in the demographic proposal, right? But it was not approved and, at the time. But his housing opinion on apartments is, what you get out of apartments is you get future dwellers. You don't get people who are usually using apartments to say, I'm gonna, raise my family there, or even the condominiums. They're moving in, they're seeing do I like this area, and then probably looking for that existing housing.
But I wonder with inflation and people not being able to afford houses, if that's not gonna be more families.
Right, mixed housing, he, felt that mixed housing really does attract people into a community because it gives them an entry point. And then they come in and they get, connected.
So I want to add a few more things. We're comparing ourselves to Lincoln Way School District. Lincoln Way built schools before their kids got there, and they're still not there. Our kids are here already. So that's one thing. And then turning the lights on in this building just for one class, the freshman class, I feel we should utilize our money more and better with 2 classes, freshman and sophomore in each school. That's just how I feel we should utilize, you know, the money.
In defense of the freshman center, 2 of us in the group came from small elementary schools. We were both graduates of Lockport High School. When I was here, all 4 grades, freshman through senior were right in this building. I think the freshman center is a great idea, and I go back, and I know this is a different comparison, but I taught 4th grade for a lot of years. And at the beginning of every year, I had to remind myself that those children in front of me were 3rd graders trying to learn how to be 4th graders. And I think of that with all the freshmen. They are 8th graders when they come in this building. And they're trying to learn how to be freshmen in high school. They're trying to learn how to be high school students. When I came here, I knew the 24 kids who were in my class, in my elementary school class, and that was it. And it was very intimidating because there's the sophomores, juniors, and seniors who are very sure of themselves and have no problem making fun of freshmen. But, you know, it's something you live through and you got there. But I think the freshman center is a great idea. And as far as building one at East Campus, I mean, we have this. And as our board member told us, you can't just sell this building. You can't just put a for sale sign in front of it and say, you know, for sale, because it's a government building. You can't do that.
2 quick comments. One, you're talking about the importance of the freshman year. I taught in a school that was elementary through 9th grade. Instead of being freshmen, they were 9th graders. They were not really high school students. They were still thinking and acting like elementary school kids. Number 2, the building, if you sell it, in the words of Janis Joplin, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. Because once it's gone forever. I'm talking about the building here.
Just a few things to kind of close out, because when we have sessions like this, you know, sometimes you feel that edge of who's right. Here's maybe something that I might propose. You know, as I advised the Board of Education and our board members' work, our board president came a little bit later, didn't have a chance to introduce President Ann Lopez Caniva. What if you're all right? What if that, you know, what if you, I think you all very well represent our community. A couple things just to propose. You know, when Jerome McKibben said our community is very diverse, hard to come to a consensus, what if we just accept that as, that is true, that is who we are, that is our community, and what it really is gosh, how can we fashion a plan that really incorporates all the big thinking that's going on? That the immediate thinking, the future thinking, that does that all, right? That no one in this room is wrong, because everybody gave up an hour and a half, maybe some more of their time, so you can't question their commitment, right? Everybody here could be doing other things, but you're doing this, right? So there's nobody in here that you could say, well, you're not committed, I don't think you're serious. You're very serious. You're giving one of the most precious things you have, your time to this, and you know, your commitment to your community. So thank you very much on behalf of the Board of Education. You know, another thing, that lack of consensus. One thing that we do deal with, Brian didn't mention this, but in Illinois, any new structure, regardless of how you feel about the new structure, has to go to a vote. And you know, so many people have said that's really problematic, whether it's hard to get people really informed about votes, people are tax adverse. It makes it a tricky, it just makes it tricky in Illinois. That's not always true in every state, but it's a particular issue that schools have to deal with. If I decided to the board and said we need 6 classrooms and a bathroom, but I want it to be a separate building, we would have to ask you as voters. It's interesting, right? Another thing is just on the piece with taxes. Perhaps our community is giving us a creative constraint to say, use the tools, find out the tools that you have. Kevin was saying, maybe what the community is saying is, you don't have to have the grand gesture all at once. How can you do that over time so that tax burden you know, to the point I think Jay was making, you know, that many people are feeling. Is that possible? Freshmen, how we treat that way station. So good conversation to have. It really, really is, just because the freshman year is so important. We could probably have a seminar by Dr. Green. I could see the thought bubbles above her head, hold her back. She would stick around and talk to you about what she sees and Dr. Oswald sees every day, right? And then finally, I think at Universal, if I asked you to anything, beyond this homework assignment, you know, go out and talk to folks. I know a number of you do this, but that just personal appeal of asking people, I'll do it with you. Let's go to a thing. Let's go to a coffee. Let's get on the website. Let's figure out. Let's get on, you know, the district's social media pages. If you can enroll other people and build the conversation bigger, you're doing it and you're engaged in it and you see it as important. And if you can recruit, you know, others, that's such a powerful thing. Those are a couple things that are really hanging over here, you know, and over all of these events that we've had. I really am grateful to you as a career public educator. Every person in this room thinks public education is important. And I can't thank you enough, because I do too. I do too. And it's listening to each other that we really kind of make some traction and build a consensus. So on behalf of the Board of Education, we really thank you. Just want to, since you're the final community forum, I want to tell you a few next steps so you know what those are. We do have a council that I mentioned, the Facilities Master Planning Council, and that council is going to meet again on November 4th. And that council's primary, one of the things that they're going to do is they're going to listen to a couple of presentations that we had at our board meeting this week, but they're also going to really say, okay, what did we hear here? We're going to try to process it out and put it all together. And they're going to do that before they jump into a process with our architects. People like Eric Sickbird are trained to say, okay, let's really start putting flesh and bones on the brochure that describes the next 20 years. That's really one of the pieces that Eric is trained to do. And so before they jump into that, they've spent about 6 months doing their homework on the district. And then they're gonna jump into that and make recommendations to the Board of Education. So as you can see, we'll meet with anybody, we'll meet at any time, in any location. And to all of you, if there's ever a time you want to just do something one-on-one, or you want me to connect with somebody, or you want to walk around a building, there is just nothing like actually getting into the real place itself, looking in the eyes of who are these kids, right? And what is going on with them? I'm easy to find on the website. Happy to give you my cell phone number as well. I've got a few business cards. And we'll just go do it. It's very, very enjoyable. So thank you for tonight. If you didn't get a water on your way in, there's water on the way out. A number of us are sticking around. We're going nowhere. We're happy to talk one-on-one. Can you give everybody here a big round of applause for your commitment to your community? Love it. Appreciate it. Have a great night. Please be careful going downstairs and going out. If you need any assistance, if you parked in lot 15, door 15, we can direct you that way too. Thanks, everybody.